Okay, so this is a walkthrough of how to get data out of a table in a paper, and then put it first in Excel and then have a play with it in Tableau Public. Not all papers do this. The tables in this paper aren't bad. The first thing we're going to need to do, of course, is to cite our sources, so we do need a reference for this. If you look on Cite, they come with reference in various styles. Now, it didn't actually have Harvard in, but I did a search for Harvard, and it came up with the reference there, which we will copy. Copy, and just go to the Excel file and just paste that in there. Right, so we got that as a record. We're not actually going to use this in the Excel file for reasons we'll talk about in a second. Right, okay, so the table the student was talking about using was table 7, which is down here. Table 7, contribution of food and beverages to iron intake by group, by gender and age group. Right, it's not a bad table and it's perfectly copyable. The stuff up at the top is a bit of a problem, so you're going to have to do that by hand. Just check when we copy the data across, just check where the columns are and rename them. But we can easily just copy this, copy everything here, go to copy, and again go into Excel and just paste that in. There are a number of issues with this, which we'll have a look at on the next workbook, because I've cleaned things up a little bit. I'm calling this raw data, so this is data which is unedited data, and you should always do this. Create a raw data workbook and then another workbook, copying the information from another workbook, which you then go to edit and edit successively. Right, so there are some issues with this, and one is that all of these, most of them anyway, have a prefix which links you to information about the source for the source of the data. Now you're going to have to delete them, either by using wherever it is, replace. But bear in mind, if you're replacing A, it's going to replace A in the cereals and grains, so you might want to think about how you can get around that, or alternatively just do it by hand. It's not a big table. So when you've done that, you've got a much better looking table, which looks like that. As I mentioned earlier on, it was a bit not particularly well organised in terms of how the names of these columns were. There were two rows with children in one and the gender in the other one. I've just put one row with one name in each, which makes life quite a lot easier. Now, this is good, but for what we want to do in Tableau, we need to do a little bit of further editing. So we're going to Edited 2 and see what we've done here. So we changed the way the data is orientated. I'll show you how to do this. So what we're going to do is just copy this data. So copy. We'll go to the next tab and just reproduce what we've done here basically. So if you go to paste, under paste options there is paste transpose. Just click on that and it automatically produces this. Now there's two in here which I don't want. This is exactly the same information. The only difference is you can be careful about this. When it transfers over, the first time it did it, it put food categories in there, and what we want is population group. So be aware of that. But for now we don't actually need the second one, so I'm going to delete that. Right, okay, so getting this into Tableau Public. I'm going to save that. Right, so I'm going to get rid of this as well. Right, okay, we're going to do this in the online version of Tableau, so I think it's a bit less clunky than the desktop one. So I've logged into my Tableau Public account. Make sure you are in Tableau Public, not Tableau as such. And I need to create a new Tableau visualization. So go to me, go to my profile, and it'll open up the visitors I have there, various ones we've seen before, some of them. And we're going to create a viz. Okay, so this will appear. Right, so we drag and drop. We've got our Excel file here. So we drag and drop, and it's put in the file. It's put in all the workbooks that we saw earlier on. So the one we're interested in is workbook 2. So drag and drop that in there. And I'm going to click on update now. We're not going to change the data. We've made sure the data's all in place where we want it to be. So I'll make this a little bit bigger. So let's see what's happening. Right, we're now going to create a data viz. So we're going to go to sheet 1. Right, so we're in Tableau Public Online, and we'll notice the tables are organised like this. There's population group here, which is straightforward. It is the groups by age, so we're going to drop that in columns. We can play around with this and have a look and see what it appears and decide what we think is best a little bit later on. And then for now we can just drop in the things we're interested in. So some of which we may not be interested in, such as alcoholic beverages. I suppose we might be interested in terms of iron. Does anyone get iron from it? Elderly male, that's interesting. Cereals and grains, and we continue to drop them in. We're getting a number of different tables being produced here. I'm not going to do all of them, just to keep everything clear about what's happening here, so we can see what's happening. Those of you who use Tableau a little bit will know that there is a very useful back button, so if you make any mistakes you can just undo. Wasn't really a mistake dropping an egg, so we'll put it back. It does save quite a lot of hassle. Right, so we've got a little filter here already, so if we just want to look at alcoholic beverages we can highlight them. We'll look at cereals, we can highlight them. But what we're really interested in, I guess, is looking at different population groups. So what we're going to want to do is filter on population groups, and this is really easy to do. Let's go to analysis, and down here we've got filters, and we pick up population groups straight away. Now over here will appear a little dialogue, so if we just want to do follow, for example, we can take everything off. We just want to follow elderly female, for example. We can just click on that, and the data for elderly female will appear. We might want to look at all females, so put all females in various groups, and we can see we can do sort of direct comparisons, which is quite useful. Yeah. Right, so there are other ways we can look at these data. I'm going to bring everything back on so we can see everything again. And of course, remember, you'll want to add all of the types of food in food groups into this row here. Just for the moment, for simplicity, I'm not going to do that. So if you click on Show Me, it's got a number of things which are highlighted, which you can, at least in principle, use as a visualization. Some of them don't always work as well as you might hope they would. Learning Tableau Public will help you understand what the options are. So we can click on that one, for example. Not particularly useful. Another thing we can do is flip the data. There's a little arrow there, swap rows and columns. Again, not particularly useful, so we'll just go back using the ever useful back arrow. That one's probably going to be more useful, because putting everything in the same table. And from children female, we may want to think about reordering these a bit later on, in a way that it is pretty clear and does allow direct comparison. So again, we can look across in this case we can look across the food measures, bring up adolescent males, and we look across the food measures, so they apparently don't drink any alcohol in Spain, which is interesting, and so on and so forth. So there we are. That's the sort of basics of using getting data into a format where we can use it in Tableau and then using it. We'll discuss this further when we meet in person. Thanks for listening.